Right, back to our top story of the day. Could we be seeing the start of a fall in net migration? Well, the Office for National Statistics says it's too early to tell. That's because the figure in the year up to June 2023 stood at a whopping 672,000.
Well, this marks a fall from the official 2022 figure. But get this, that's only because the last figure has now been revised up to show that net migration actually hit a record level of 745,000 last year rather than 607,000, which is what we thought it was.
Yeah, well, it's put Rishi Sunak under renewed pressure from his party. Tory MPs are demanding action from ministers to bring down those numbers, both legal and illegal migration.
Well, let's dive into the nitty-gritty here with our security and home editor, Mark White. Mark, what are the details of these numbers?
Well, remember, it was a key pledge of the now Foreign Secretary, former Prime Minister David Cameron, to bring net migration down to the tens of thousands. Well, it's staggering to see where we are now, not that long on from when David Cameron spoke about this. 672,000 is the net migration to the UK in the year to June. And that was made up of about 1.2 million who arrived in the UK and about 500,000 who left the UK. But arguably, the most astonishing figure was not the year to June, but the previous statistics, which have been revised upwards by the Office for National Statistics. Look at that figure, 745,000 net migration in the year to December 2022. That was up 139,000 on the figures we were talking about earlier in the year, which had reached a record level of 606,000. But we didn't know it was 139,000 more than that. Taking a look at some of the other figures within the latest stats, you can see that work visas were at 322,000, up 87,000. 50,000 of those were for dependents. And then looking at student visas, well, student visas have gone up to 378,000, 58,000 up on the previous set of figures. And again, drilling down into that, 96,000 of those student visas were issued to dependents, up 38,000 on the previous figures. And actually, the Home Office have also issued a set of figures as well, which show that in their calculations, 154,000 student visas were issued to dependents. And the reason that there is that difference between 96,000 and 154,000 is because they've issued the visas, but those dependents haven't arrived as yet. Now, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, has been accentuating the positive. He certainly has. He says behind the overall migration figures are a number of important and positive changes. He says today's statistics, which show the biggest drivers of immigration to the UK are students and healthcare workers, are testament, he says, both to our world-leading university sector, WEHE, and to our immigration system, which prioritises the skills we need. Double WEHE there for the Home Secretary. Talk about accentuating the positive.
Do I sense a bit of disbelief from you, Mark?
No, I mean, hats off to him if he can find anything in those figures that is positive, because really 672,000 people into the UK, when you have a government that has been committed to driving those figures down to the tens of thousands since 2010, effectively, it takes a lot of doing to come away with some positives.
Well, Mark White, thank you so much for talking us through.
Hang on, I have one more question for Mark. One more question for Mark, quickly. You've done a bit of digging for us on who's leaving. A lot of people are interested in who are the people who are leaving this country.
I'd like to take the credit for this, but it was our trusty producer, Tom Fredericks, who was burying his head into those figures just for you, Emily. And that shows that the numbers of the 500,000 figure, those that left the UK, round about 100,000, just under, are actually British nationals going off to work and study abroad. The majority of the rest of that 400-odd thousand is students that are reaching the end or have reached the end of their study period and they're returning back to their home countries.
It's frankly staggering what a proportion of those both coming in and leaving are students. 400,000, the bulk of that, students leaving, but also 378,000 students and their dependents. That's more than half of the entire number coming in are students.
I wonder whether it's such a good thing that our universities are so dependent on foreign students.
I don't know, it's Britain around the world.
Well, it's good.
To take a James Dudley line on it.
But do they prop up some of the less valuable courses? I don't know. I don't know. Just putting it out there. Anyway, thank you very much indeed, Mark White, Home and Security Editor at GB News.
I think if it was up to me, I'd put a hard limit on... You know, they rank universities every year. Perhaps only the top 100 universities should take international students. I think that would weed out quite a lot. I don't know, maybe the top 150, maybe I'm being too mean.
Shall we speak to Conservative MP Sir Michael Fabricant? Hello, Michael. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Ah, there you are.
Hi,
James Cleverly seems rather relaxed about these migration figures. Are you?
No, but I must say, though, on the student front, let me tell you, before I became an MP, I used to sell radio and television stations abroad. And one of the things I always found, it was easier to sell in countries where the engineers had gone to British universities. So it actually does have payback. And I'm not so bothered personally. You know, the more foreign students who pay a fortune to go to British universities there are, it means you pay less.
Hang on, Michael.
If you're a British student.
That's all well and good, and I'm all for global Britain and having students come here, but of course they do require housing. And they may use public services and they may wish to use transport and everything else. And unfortunately, your government hasn't built the infrastructure needed.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's a fair point. But, you know, students leave, as you've already been saying, as well as come in. But let's focus on those who shouldn't be here, the illegal immigrants. They are the problem. Now, the government's been looking at all sorts of solutions. They looked at the Labour Party's solution, which was interesting, to do a deal with Europe. But Europe, of course, is also having a real problem now with increased immigration. Hence, and I hope you're going to be impressed with the correct pronunciation, the election of Geert Wilders in Holland. Dutch radio are clients of mine, so I'm very good on the old Dutch pronunciation. Because you get a lot of people getting elected now in Germany and France and Holland, as we've seen, who are becoming very Eurosceptic. I mean, God, even Michel Barnier, the one we were negotiating against when we were trying to leave the EU, is now saying there has to be now a new European Union which redefines things. But anyway, back to your point, which was all about immigration. So we looked at the Labour Party's suggestion, but with increased immigration into continental Europe, it would mean even more immigration into the UK and people that we would have no control over at all. So the Labour Party idea is rejected. The government has looked at other possible locations because following the Supreme Court ruling, which said, yes, in principle, you can process applications abroad, but they didn't like the idea of doing it in Rwanda. I know the government's looked at the Falklands and other locations. They were slightly worried, I'm told, when they looked at certain crown colonies like Bermuda and thought, hang on, that might be too attractive and people might even more will want to come in the hope they'll be sent.
Michael, I'd be getting in a small boat if it meant a free trip to Bermuda.
Me too. I'll go with you, Tom. So anyway, they've been looking at that, and now they're going to try and give them government, they're doing government legislation to see whether we can still send people to Rwanda, which will deter people from coming here. Of course, there has been a little improvement. We've done a deal with Albania. So 90% of Albanians have now been sent back to Albania. Italy's done a deal with Albania, which we don't yet have, which is where they process everybody in Albania, a bit like we want to process them in Rwanda. Maybe the Albanians will agree to that. Who knows?
It's interesting, though, Michael, because these are two separate issues. The illegal migration that I think everyone agrees we need to get down. Ideally, you'd, of course, have zero illegal migration. But then when it comes to...
Some people don't believe that there's even such a thing.
That's true, that's true. But when it comes to legal migration, after leaving the European Union, that is something the government does have complete control over. What do you think needs to change with regard to how many visas we issue, whether or not we count students in the overall number, or what policy changes do we need to see here?
I think that's a very fair point. Do you count students and their dependents? Because, yeah, Emily's right. They use up resources and whatever. But we do have student accommodation as well, and universities are building for that. But they come, and then most of them go again. Some stay illegally, but they come and they go, and they're legal. I really think we should be looking at the
but then more come and more go, so it's constant. So it does add to the population.
Emily, it's great for our universities. I mean, I talk at great length with Adam Tickell and others. He's the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Birmingham. I don't think our great universities would be as great if we didn't get the overseas students. I mean, there is a limit that we set anyway, but I actually think, no, when it comes to students coming to the UK, I think it's a good thing for our universities and the UK, but it's the illegal ones, the boat.
Yeah, Michael, I think the issue for a lot of people is the dependents, which I believe the government is actually cracking down on, although I'm not sure when it will kick in, because a lot of people are very surprised when they hear that
the students
that you're
come along
with
wider families and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I know. But you know what the problem is? The problem is that 4 out of the top 10 universities in the world are British. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, we also have some less top ones, but we do have fantastic universities. That is very true. Thank you very much for your time, Michael Fabricant, Sir Michael Fabricant, Conservative MP. Interesting.
Yeah, no, I thought very interesting, and I do think there is a distinction to be made here between genuine students and migrants. And perhaps there's an even bigger distinction there between students who come here legitimately to go to some of those top universities and perhaps those that come to pretend to go to university that actually just want to bring their families into the UK.
Well, yes, don't you remember there were quite a few investigations into sham courses?
What Theresa May did as Home Secretary.
Basically a visa.
Yeah.
Through the back door. Just, say you're signing up to this English course or something,
well, we
and
heard
then you go.
from Michael Fabricant there, the Conservative MP. Labour's Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has said that these net migration figures highlight the failure of the Tories on migration. She accused them of breaking the asylum system.
Again, mixing up legal and illegal migration there. Let's cross to Dover, speak with our South East reporter, Ray Addison. Ray, can you bring us some updates from the Channel?
Yes, well, I suppose the Labour Party might argue that the level of illegal migration that's been announced today, which is at 45,000 for the year to September of 2023, might be partly or entirely because there aren't enough legal routes of asylum to enter the United Kingdom. Obviously, that one is up for debate. Of that 45,000 who entered the country illegally, 37,500 or 83% arrived via small boats, and they would have turned up here at the port of Dover or on an RNLI vessel at one of the other ports along the coastline as they made their way from France across the English Channel over the last 12 months. Now, that figure is down 16%, so the government will say that that's obviously a positive. And the number of boats and the people per boat, 787 vessels, that's down 34%. So less boats have actually been arriving, but they are getting bigger so that more people can actually be in those vessels. It's jumped from 37 to 48 now, an average of 48 people per small boat. And we have heard of even bigger numbers than that. Where did those people that did arrive here via small boats come from? And who were they? 88% were males, and a quarter of those who arrived, that's around about 9,000 people, were Afghans. The second highest nationalities were Iranians and then Iraqis. And as Mr. Fabricant was mentioning there, we have received a reduction in Albanians due to the prisoner transfer agreement. Of course, many do claim asylum, but the new data system has not been transitioned yet, so we don't have all the latest stats on that. What we do know, though, is that since 2018, 74% of people who arrived via small boat are still awaiting a decision on their asylum application. Wow, held in that sort of sclerotic state of being put in a hotel but not allowed to work, can't leave, it's madness. But also 88% male.
call me a cynic, but I would have thought the most vulnerable people escaping potential or seeking asylum might not be 88% male. Ray Addison, thank you very much for the latest there.
Something to ponder.